Let's quickly talk about a small leak for the printed points in the Adeptus Mechanicus codex, perhaps giving us some hints for the points for the Sidonian Skatros and the Radium Jezzail Dragoon, which is looking rather cheap indeed. Hello and welcome back to Horsebets Tactics, where today I thought I'd just briefly talk about an Admech Points leak. This one not quite as interesting as the points that will come in the Munitorum Field Manual, but I still think maybe helps us understand a few things. It seems that both point sections for the Admech and the Necrons have been circulating over the past day or so, and as with Warhammer 40k's codex offerings these days, the ones that actually come out in the codex aren't going to be the ones that are going to be active going forwards. And when the digital updates to the Munitorum Field Manual and the Warhammer app come out, these will be updated for the true intended points costs for the Admech units to have with their new codex. The point sections come with a QR code that links you to the right place, and although it annoys some people that the codex points are obsolete basically on printing, I guess it does mean that you can actually use the book without the internet or anything. And compared with other points update systems, I think it's quite a bit better than Games Workshop charging us large amounts for printed tables of points in chapter approved. That was a bad system. Getting on to the Admech Points leak though, and this is basically the soon to be outdated book section in the codex. It seems to have been quite widely shared with simple Google searches bringing it up. And unfortunately, at least at time of recording, it looks like it's the unit points costs that have been shared and not things like the enhancements. As with the Necrons book, this is mostly a copy of the original points costs of 10th edition release, the ones for the Adeptus Mechanicus when the edition first came out. So this is before the faction got some fairly drastic points reductions in the September balance data slate. It shows that the codex was written before the September balance data slate changes came into effect, and there are some dead giveaways in it, say for example the ridiculously astronomical points cost of Skitari Rangers that we had back then, initially very overcosted at 125 points before Games Workshop reined them in significantly. It does basically show that this points page is out of date, and you definitely shouldn't take it as the ones that will be updated for the field manual, but as with the Necron one, it still shows us some interesting stuff. For me, probably the most interesting takeaways are the points cost for the new Sidonian Skatros model. Not saying that it couldn't be different to that when they do update the points, but it shows the initial offering that they were going to have for him, plus the very big points difference between the Dragoon armed with the Taser Lance and the one with the Radium Jezzail, and a few points cost that changed quite a lot since the initial launch index, often looking like they're the result of the rules changes in the codex book. Again, just to underline this, to spell it out so no one's confused, the page will be outdated, the digital download will look different and better than this, but it does give us some interesting hints, and we'll talk through the actual codex points when they're dropped on the Munitorum Field Manual. First up though, the codex recorded points for the Sidonian Skatros is that he's 65 points, and that does tie in with previous rumours that I'd heard about him. Realistically, I think he'd be kind of overcosted at this price, unfortunately. Lone operatives are definitely very handy to have in Warhammer 40k. They can stand on primary objectives and know that they're safe provided the opponent can't get close, or can be interesting enough to turn up to do secondary objectives on the flanks maybe. But unfortunately the damage output that this guy has is just truly really quite bad. And I feel like if you want a lone operative with a good sniper weapon, you're probably going to go for the Vindicator over this. I think it would be worth the 15 points to actually threaten to do something big. I'd hope that overall the download points will be considerably less than this. I'd say more like 50 points could make him a little bit more tempting of a pick. Kind of a shame that the core datasheet rules didn't just have him be a little bit more threatening on his base profile really though. Otherwise, perhaps one of the more interesting things were the two Dragoon datasheets. We've now got the one for the Taser Lance one and the one with the Radium Jezzail. Listed in the codex, the Jezzail one is 45 points and the Taser Lance one is 80. Really quite an enormous points difference there, and it seems like they're actually embracing these split datasheets to give them radically different points costs to actually try and make the Radium one kind of playable, even if its damage outputs like the Sidonian Skatros is on the fairly weak side. At 45 points, that's a very tanky war curve for that kind of cost. You'd be using it as a bit of an outrider that's really not all about the damage. It's just literally a tanky nuisance miniature to move up the board and do a bit of a screening and nuisance harassment role. I genuinely think that they could be very annoying at that kind of points cost. At 45 points though, I must admit I think I would be kind of tempted to upgrade to the Iron Strider with twin las cannons. I guess it means if you really like random walking chicken walkers all over the map, then you could have really quite a lot of them. You could have 3 of each datasheet if you really wanted to go big on them. The Radium Jezzail one is always going to be in a bit of a weird place, definitely far more valuable for the toughness and wounds that it brings to the table, rather than the kind of mediocre sniper damage that the Jezzail has. The Taser Lance one was recorded at 80 points here. I'd compare that to the initial launch one in 10th edition that was 75 points. I guess it might be paying 5 points more than that due to being able to advance and charge, which is a big boost. Currently the Minotaur and Field Manual one in 1.4 was 60 points. I feel like anywhere around that would be kind of fine, even if it did go up to 65 for the privilege of advance and charge. Otherwise, I'd say that they're perhaps the two most interesting bits on the datasheet changes. Besides that, though, there's quite a lot of small tweaks that seem to have represented units going up or down a bit, depending on codex rule changes. These points values, again, I'm comparing to the ones that came out at the start of 10th edition, not the more recent Admech ones that we've had, as it just doesn't really make sense to compare them given that they're clearly based off the former. Most of the stuff is similar to the start of 10th edition cost. For a few changes, it looks like the Honor to Dune Crawler was paying a little bit more for the new force field. The Stratoraptor was paying a bit more for the guns being better with damage too. The Fusilier drops down to 150, probably because the bombs got worse. And the Scorpius Dune Rider looks like it took a rather nasty looking hit with an extra 15 points up to 95 points, probably due to twin linked on all the guns, plus the damage buffing rule for units getting out of it. Between those two, it might go up in points a little bit. I'd hope it wouldn't go up as much as 95 though, that seems perhaps a bit excessive. Otherwise, tiny points increase for Core, and the Corpuscari and Fulgurite priests went down a little bit. Not sure why the Corpuscari would have gone down too much here. It did get that rather nice slowing special rule, which I think is still good, and probably better than the previous -1 to wound one they had. Otherwise, for the Skitari squads, the Skystalkers went down a little bit, not sure why there, but the Cerberus Raiders went up 5 points to 80, that might be due to gaining a little bit of AP and melee. And weirdly enough, the Rangers and Vanguard that were considered hilariously overcosted when they came out both seem to have gone up 5 points in this version of the Codex. The Rangers all the way to a slightly mind-boggling 130 points for the unit. Just seems very weird indeed that anyone thought that that unit might have been a bit undercosted at 125. I guess the Skitari troops increase might have been due to getting an improvement in saves since 10th edition launch. They started the edition with a save of a 5+ with a 6+ invulnerable, and it did improve in the codex to a 4+ or 5+ invulnerable, even if they added it in the balanced data slate in the meantime. Obviously just a little bit of minor news there, and I guess we won't know more until the actual download points come out for the book. Fingers crossed Games Workshop actually get on with that sometime in the coming week. Interesting enough to see though that the Jezzail Dragoon does seem to be significantly cheaper than the Taser one. They are trying to make it playable, and perhaps a slight hint that some of the units in the codex might pay increased points costs for their new abilities, though it might not be quite as dramatic as the ones that we've seen here. Let me know your thoughts though, and any hopes and fears for the actual points when we get them from the download. Look forward to hearing your insights in the comments below. Finally, if you have enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the videos coming, and I will cover those points costs on the channel when we get them. And if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that I do have a Patreon page as well, which is the main reason that allows me to keep on making videos like this just about every day. You can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.